All right, everyone. So far we have seen in the first lecture, in the first day, that what is cloud computing. So I'm just gonna put those as a recap. So anybody who have missed the first lecture, they might know what we have covered, and they should go and definitely check out the recordings. We've seen what is cloud computing, and we've also seen what are the cloud different types, cloud services and its types. And we've also seen the types of cloud, right? Towards the end of the lecture, I did talk about the different types of cloud, but I just wanted to make sure that we all are on the same page and we have the clarity. When I say we, the people who have actually taken a class from us, and they build a right understanding. So we saw there are four different types of the cloud. You have a public cloud, private cloud, government cloud, and the community cloud, right? And we, I mean, we spent about 2.5 hours or somewhere close to 2 hours just talking about the cloud computing and its services and the different types of cloud. And if you probably go and see someone else's video, they're just going to wrap this in the 10 minutes. So it's not like a normal cloud thing, that what we discussed. What I wanted to give you in that lecture is a holistic view when you work for a project, not just for a certification perspective. So you get a good idea, because certification is your starting point, right? Eventually you want to get a job and you want to work for a company, and things are very complex, right? So certifications are not that difficult, trust me. You can bring a college fresh out and training for 3 months or max 6 months. He will be able to certify himself, right? So he can get an architect certification. He can get any kind of a certification provided he studies enough for that. So the problem comes in when he goes to the company, when he works, start working about, start the project. He has no clue what's happening, right? Most of the time, and he struggles massively. And that's what I don't want you to guys to do. So if you can get a view, like like a person who's working, and somebody, somebody like myself who have been in the industry for so long, and I know what, when we say cloud, what should come in your head, and that these are the things, what we have discussed. These are the different areas where you have to put your focus on as well. So if you have missed it, go definitely check out. If you've seen it, then you have to see those multiple times, because there's so much information, right? And you may not be able to grasp or capture everything. So you have to watch them twice, thrice, maybe multiple times before you can master it, and before you register everything in your head. So that's very important concept. That's in a very important aspect of that, of those lectures. So I'm just gonna put a few terms here, just to make sure that we all have the clarity. So we've seen different four types of cloud, but you see a lot people talking about hybrid cloud. And then, if some people say hybrid cloud is the combination of two clouds. So if I'm working on Azure and if I'm working on AWS, that's my hybrid cloud. No, you are wrong. And this is where I want you guys to get yourself correct, because this is erroneously used to represent two public cloud, but that's not the right thing. Hybrid cloud is, you have a cloud which is on-prem and which is a public cloud, right? On-prem cloud or public cloud. And then you should also have public cloud. So when you have a combination of private cloud and the public cloud, then you can say, okay, we have a hybrid cloud environment. Otherwise, that's not a hybrid cloud environment, right? And I'm gonna give you all the pointers. Then if it's not a hybrid cloud, then what it is, right? So this is the hybrid cloud. And we know we can't just say anything cloud. Cloud has to have those five characteristics. Then only it qualifies as a cloud. You've seen the definition by the NIST. I didn't give you the formal definition, but I broken it down, right? Because that's what you need for your understanding. You can always go and read the white paper, which is published by the NIST, the National Institute of Technology and Standards, and you can see the formal definition. The whole point here was that you get a better understanding, better sense of, what are those five characteristics. And I hope you were able to understand all of those. So I'm just going to put this. This is your hybrid cloud. And then what we have is hybrid environment, hybrid environment, and I'm going to give it a different color. So in case of hybrid environment, what's happened is that you have on-prem data center. Now, this is not a cloud right now. This is also on-prem, but this is on-prem cloud, but this is not your on-prem cloud. And then you can have public or private, any of, you can have public cloud, or you can have the private cloud. That's that's your hybrid. This is your hybrid environment. This is not a public cloud, or this is not a hybrid cloud, right? So I just want you to get your fact right, and you start putting the right term at the right places, right? Instead of just erroneously using anything that just comes in your head, just throw it out. Don't do that, right? And then you have something called multi-cloud, right? And this is where your public clouds comes into picture, right? So this is where you can have one AWS, and you can have one, any other cloud. And that would be, you can have two cloud or two CSP, I should rather say. And we'll see the difference between CSP and the cloud platforms, right? So this is what you have to, and you have to have the understanding. So these are the definition of the hybrid cloud, hybrid environment, and multi-cloud. So you want to get your facts straight. You want to make sure that you are pronouncing, or you are putting the right term at the right places, not just using without knowing the essence of what you are using, right? So I just get it right. Now, we may not be working for a cloud platform, right? I mean, we will be, but not just the cloud. I mean, most of the time, the giant companies that we are talking about, the certification that you probably be going to be going for, right, that'll be the CSP. Now, you might wonder, what is CSP? Now, some of you may know what is CSP, and some of you may not know what is CSP. So I'm just going to put this here, cloud service provider. Okay, so CSP is your cloud service provider. Let me just put this one nice little color here as well. So this is your CSP, and CSP means cloud service provider, which means they provide services. And you cannot just call any cloud company a CSP. CSP, similar to the cloud, you cannot just call any kind of a hosting as a cloud. Similarly, you can't just call simply any cloud service provider, right? I mean, we have seen the different types of services. There are SaaS services out there, right? So you can't just simply call all these different, one-off service provider as a CSP or cloud service provider. When we say we're talking about the host of services, it has to be provided. So first and foremost, what it should provide is the range of services which we can glue services together to form architecture, right? You might know about three-tier architecture, four-tier architecture, n-tier architecture, right? So how do you do that? By putting different services together, and that's how you get that. So you should be able to put or chain these services together to form a cloud architecture, or the application end-to-end architecture, all the services that you want. There are so many services. You you know you can start from the DNS. For example, let's say, you connect to google.com, right? So google.com is a very friendly name, right? Something that you can remember. Like I can remember, you can remember, all the humans can remember, because it's very friendly name, and that's what you have to think of your domain. Something that people can remember. It's easy to pronounce, easy to remember, and easy to call as well. So google.com is what, you know, is what for the end user, right? But for a technician person, or for an IT person, you have to understand what's happening behind the scene. When you select something like this, you have to bear in mind that your machine, the machine who does all the processing, who only understands the binary at this moment, should be able to understand what the google.com is. So there is a way to get to that part. right? So communication on the network, everything happens through the socket, right? So one thing you know about that. So let me just put that here maybe. So communication on the network happens with the socket, and socket is nothing but your IP address and port. Now, when you connect to google.com, and if it's a secure connection, which is a HTTPS, then that's your 443, right? That's the port we have. And remembering all these port, these are oftentimes asked in the interviews, right? They might ask you about the ports of the HTTP and this and that and all other services. So I'm just going to write it down because these are your bread and butter, right? So you should be able to remember all this. So 443, that's for HTTPS, and HTTP is 80. So that's your port. Now, where do you get the IP from, right? Because the google.com, okay, fine, it's HTTPS, then we know it's a port 443, or if it's just a plain HTTP unsecure website, then it's going to be 80. Now, where do you get the IP from? Right? So this is where somebody called DNS who's going to resolve your name into IP address. Now, I just want to give you not just google.com won't be converted into IP straight away. Now there's a few hops, right? There might be more than that, but we're just going to touch base upon two because that's the majority of the time the case going to be. So let's say you have a google.com. Google.com is a friendly name, right? And in the computer terms, we call that friendly name CNAME or canonical name. So this thing, what you have will be, there will be a CNAME entry, right? A canonical name, which is going to convert your this friendly name. That's a job of your DNS. Let me just bring this up and bring this up a little. Right. The CNAME now will be converted into something called hostname. Right. Hostname, if you've logged into your computer or if you have logged into Linux servers, you can run the simply command called hostname and you can see the hostname. So that CNAME will give you hostname. But again, we're talking about IP. We're not talking about hostname, right? So let me just put that down here. Okay. And maybe I can bring these guys here. I don't know why this arrow won't fit into the right place. Okay, now it did. And I'm just gonna put this here. And okay, so you got a host name, but we still need IP. We don't need host name, right? How do we get that? So the next record, what we have, this is a CNAME record, by the way. So I'm just gonna say that. And this is a DNS type of the record, but the whole point here is to put it because when you work for a project, you have to deal with this, right? And there are different topics, right? We have a different services. In AWS for the DNS, we have our Route 53, and we'll be talking more about the DNS and all of this record types. But I wanted to plant the idea at the beginning. So you get a thought process and you start thinking about it from the day one, right? So that's how things are happening because these are very much relatable. A user would know that, okay, google.com would be converted into some kind of IP, but an engineer should understand the what's happening behind the scene. It's not just a straight away plain simple conversion of your google.com into some kind of IP. There's this process that's going on, right? So you have to understand there is a CNAME, which is a more friendly name, and then the CNAME is converted to the host name because you cannot create a CNAME entry against the IP address. And then once you get that IP address, then there will be another record, which is a record or alias record, which is A and double A is for your IPv6. This guy now is going to give you the IP address. And so let me just say that, put it here. All right. So this will return the IP address, and that's what your network is going to use to form a socket. And you'll get a socket and you already know the port, right? You create a socket, now you know the IP, and that's how you do that. Now there are so many different records which we will see during the DNS lecture, and we will be, for AWS, we'll be talking about Route 53. And the name for Route 53 is actually, it's a DNS port, by the way. So port for DNS is 53. And that's the port, so AWS have used that to just give the name of the service, because creating the routes, it's actually traveling, flowing through the routes. So this is where the name DNS is coming from. All right. So you need a one of these services, right? Now we're talking about gluing those services. This is not what we were talking about. This is just me giving you a side story, side point, so you can better remember this. Right. Now, next thing, once you land to the DNS service to get an IP address, the next thing you do is to connect to a load balancer. Now, this load balancer job is to distribute the traffic, just to make sure that behind the scene you have multitude of servers, and this will redirect your traffic to some kind of a backend server, right? So you're gonna have a backend server. So you need this one of these service, and then you need another service for the load balancer, and another service for this. Next, you can have a different type of the storage. You can have an RDBMS database, and then you can also have some different object storage, in different medium of storage to store objects, flat files, and blobs, and other things. You can also need a monitoring service, right? You can also need some kind of analytics if you want to perform that. So let me just put that as well. Warehousing and analytics. So you need these kind of service as well. And these backend servers probably connecting to all of these, right? So let me just put it here, maybe bring it down so the board looks similar. All right. So this is now a very, very basic, simple architecture, right? Looks like a three-tier, but I mean, you can name it whatever you want, because now it's just not living in a three-tier. There is an n-tier. So you can come up with any tiers you want, with especially with the advent of microservices and the cloud. There are so many different tiers now you have. Okay, so this is what you should be able to do it when when you say something that is a CSP, because these are the different services your CSP is providing, and you are able to put all these services together. You are chaining them, or you are gluing them, sticking them together to form architecture. And this is the architecture. This is the blueprint what we have created, right? So this is what um you should be able to do it if you want to call any cloud platform as a CSP, because you have to pay. You have to be very careful when you say that. You have to be very careful when you say cloud, because you can't just say simply any hosting service is a cloud unless it has those five attributes. Similarly, you can't simply call anything as a CSP if you don't have those different characteristics within them. All right. So the next, and which is a very important service, infrastructure as a service. Now, if you're going to call any CSP, you know, uh, any cloud platform or any cloud company, so cloud service provider, it has to also provide infrastructure as a service. Now, this is very important. This is actually what made cloud what cloud is today. Otherwise, there were so many different products, SaaS-based products and PaaS-based products were already there in the market. But infrastructure, when the service of the infrastructure started, I mean, that was the big turning point into the cloud market. And cloud from ever since, it is just moving upward. It's boom. And infrastructure as a service, these are the services are most used on any other cloud, because this was the groundbreaking invention. This was something people didn't imagine. People questioned it when they even just came up with the idea, right? So Amazon did something which nobody could imagine or could think, and now because they did it first, they are the leader. And so you should be able to do that. You should be able to do this as well. Now, these are the very main important building blocks, or where main components where a cloud company can qualify themselves as a CSP. Now, others are fairly straightforward. You should have the API similar to unified API access. You should have it similar to we've seen in the cloud feature as well. And then you should also have monitoring features built in, and you should also be able to use in infrastructure automation, right? IC. Now, IC, infrastructure automation, which means anything that you are able to create with the API, that's your infrastructure, right? This is what the Terraform says. Now, something I've already told you guys during the Terraform lecture, right? That HashiCorp says anything that you can create with the API, that is your infrastructure. So when you do anything with the API, you should be able to use a service like IAC within the cloud to automate all your infrastructure provisioning and infrastructure creation. And then you should also be able to measure these services. Right. When we say measure, we're just talking about the billing. It should be per second, per minute, sort of a billing. It should not be a license which is assigned to you for a product. Now, regardless if you want to use it or not, you're just gonna have to pay for it. Like for example, when you buy an enterprise Terraform, you're gonna get a license as per workspaces. Now, whether you use those workspaces or you don't use those workspaces, it really doesn't matter. You have to pay for it. So it's not a per usage, pay as you go sort of usage. There's no metered billing. There's no service that you can measure. You just have to buy it, right? Similar to what you used to do on the on-prem when we talked about, how the stuff on the on-prem is you just have to commit, right? And similarly for, now HashiCorp has a cloud. HashiCorp can call themselves as a cloud platform, but they cannot simply call them as a cloud service provider. Now, all these things that I've posted here, as a part of the CSP definition, these are all opinionated. And over time, these are subject to change. So today, these are the things qualifies a company as a cloud service provider, but tomorrow it might be something else, right? There might be some addition or some subtraction. So so keep an eye on that and also pay attention to that as well. Don't just stick to this because over time this might change and there might be some addition and some removal of all of these. Now, other than that, any other service that that provide some kind of a cloud services, and most of the companies are actually going to provide you a SaaS based services like the Gmail account, like a GitHub or GitLab. These are all the SaaS based product, right? So even though they're provide Atlassian's product like Jira and all those you have, these are also a cloud based services. One of the type of the cloud service, right? So we have seen the different types of the cloud. We have seen so many types of the cloud, and that's your one of the cloud service they are providing. But they cannot call, or they don't qualify as a CSP. They're simply gonna be called as a cloud platform. So at the top, I'm just gonna put Heroku because it's very famous within the developers world because it gives you the platform as a services where you don't need to really worry about your infrastructure setup and all those things. You only concentrate on the coding and just deploy your application without having to worry about any of the infrastructure component, the user management, security, and all those sort of things, right? So you have company like Heroku, SAP, Atlassian, HashiCorp, of course, our favorite because we are using a lot of our HashiCorp product, Salesforce, and many more, right? There are so many different companies you can think of. Any company that doesn't provide all of these services, all of these services, all of these some different types of component that we've discussed, then you're simply going to call them cloud platform. You're not going to call them a cloud service provider because cloud service provider should be able to facilitate all the components that we have discussed about, or that's something I've showed you, right? So that's what the cloud is, and our focus, here is only going to be on the CSPs. We won't probably, I mean, we will also be talking about the cloud platform because we'll be working with the HashiCorp and other. There are so many HashiCorp products, right, which we will be discussing within our DevOps course that we have. So you have that, the cloud platform now, and now there are different cloud companies. There are so many different cloud companies we have. We have major players, and we have a mid section, and then we have the lower berth. The cloud companies who only operates at the very low level. And more often than not, you're probably not going to be working for the lower or mid unless you get a job in those companies because they don't have a huge market share compared to the top tier cloud companies that we have. So I'm just going to put those companies name here. So let me just bring those guys here. Right. So we have at the top, we have, tier one or premium tier, you can call it. So we have tier one cloud companies, which are, this. So you have AWS is the leader because they are the founder or the pioneer of the most of the services or the infrastructure as a service that we use. Then you have Azure, a very good competitor, and then of course Google also have the cloud. Is a major cloud player, and then you have the Ali Cloud, which is only on the mainland China and the Far East, like Philippines, Japan, Korea, North Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia. I mean, these are the countries who are extensively using these Ali Cloud products. And so, Ali is also considered to be the tier one CSP provider because it actually has pretty much all the services which you can see on AWS, Azure, or GCP. Now, similarly, this is your tier one, and they are the early players. They came to cloud very early. Their offerings, they have a host, a wide range of varieties of the different cloud offerings, and they are very well recognized in the industry as well. They have a very reputation. They have a very good market share as well. So they are regarded as a top tier. Then we have tier two, which is companies owned by, again, I mean, similar to Microsoft Azure, which already has that dominant in the technology world. IBM and Oracle, they also had that. Microsoft, they're the leader in the desktop operating system. IBM mostly the hardware manufacturing, and at the same time other services as well. They've expanded into Oracle, the leader in the RDBMS, the database, and so they also came up with the cloud, but they could not I mean, the innovation of the services is not as fast as the cloud companies in the tier one. So they are very slow to innovate, and they're not really competing with these cloud companies. They rather turn into very specialize into certain areas, because Oracle is very specialized in the data services. So their data services, they already have the existing customer, and they're pushing their services into the specialized area. IBM probably fine tuning their hardware, making sure the hardware is fine tuned for the application which they provide, because there are so many application IBM owns. They're buying it. I mean, the unprecedented rate. The big fish eats the small fish. That kind of business, they do it. Like pretty much everybody do it. So I'm not just picking out the IBM's name, but you have that kind of business there. And their rack space is very much focused on the OpenStack sort of development. They have a lot of people that are developing the OpenStack, and they offer that service to the companies. If they want to build their own private cloud, then they have their specialized people, because they have the team who contributes to the OpenStack, which you can use to build your private cloud. So you have that kind of a thing here. And then we have the low, we have the third tier, which you have a lot of companies again in the third tier as well. So I'm just gonna bring that here. Right. So there are some reason I'm not able to get it. Okay. Okay, so you have these, and I'm just gonna write the other two name. I mean, you might have heard about those names as well. You have a DigitalOcean, and you have a Linode, right? You may see a lot of ads floating around. You may see, a lot of advertisement on the YouTube or just on the Google. So these are very economical, I would say. They are cheap, and they don't offer all of the services, but they offer enough to qualify themselves as a CSP. So they are not the services they have. You at least have they started with the one service, then started adding another, like they had just a VM, and then they added a database service, then they added DNS service, then certification, so the SSL and all those certificate services, and then Kubernetes and this and that. So they do have the services enough for them to be qualified as a CSP, but they don't have the services which can be competed with the tier one or tier one actually. So that's the case with them. They are very simple, very cost effective, very economical, and you'll probably not going to see a lot of big companies going for it. Only the mid-size and startup, because that's what they're targeting on. I mean, exactly what AWS did at the beginning, because when AWS came, they knew that the Fortune 500 company is not going to buy their services. They're not going to come onto the cloud because they are comfortable on the virtualization on-prem. So their first target on a Silicon Valley was the startup companies, the company who just started, right? Now, because they've moved on, right? So they have all the big companies, the Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies. I mean, you name it, like all the multinational, multi-billion dollar companies, they want to go on these tier one cloud. So that business now actually these companies are doing, and who knows, over time they will grow and they might compete because they're doing exactly what the AWS did at the beginning. Back in 2006, 2007, AWS was just like 8-year-old company, or maybe I don't know 95. So maybe they were like 10 years old company, and they could only but they were not into IT. 10 year they're not the 10-year-old IT company. They were more into retail business. They were selling the books, and they started with a different e-commerce product. So what AWS did at the beginning, same thing these small tier 3 or light tier cloud companies are doing nowadays. Right. So there you have a different type of CSP provider, the cloud service provider. And then at the same time, I've also given you a little overview of the cloud platform companies. So it's, now you have to make your decision based on that. Now, let me quickly run you guys with the market share, what we have on the cloud side. So this is something I had posted, this diagram just to give you guys a glimpse of what's happening. And this is the this is the cloud infrastructure market size, and this was published in the second, third quarter of current year. So this is where everything stands. AWS has the most, and of course, they are the leader. They were the very first to the market. They captured a lot of customers, and they have a lot of cloud infrastructure market size. So they are at the 34%. Then you have Azure, followed by GCP, then IBM, Salesforce, Tencent, and also Oracle. But your focus going to be on the top three ones, right? Because this is where we want to target. This is where you need to target for the jobs. Because when you're done with your courses, I mean, that's the only reason why you're trying to learn, not learning just for your hobby. Maybe you are, I don't know, but majority of the people here are there because they want to learn and then they want to get the job. All right. So that's what you have. And it's not just about now one cloud. So the reason why you see there is a increase in Azure and GCP and other clouds is because company wants to go multi-cloud now, right? Something we have seen, the different types of the cloud and mixture of the cloud when you do that. So they want to go more multi-cloud, and there are various reasons. They don't want to get monopolized. They want to get into some kind of a vendor lock-in situation. They want to explore and make sure they have their presence on multiple clouds. To There might be certain services which are a lot easier on AWS or maybe on the Azure, any Microsoft specific services like the database or Power BI or any other thing that Microsoft exclusively offers, right? So those services, integration and licensing, you get those benefit. Maybe you can migrate the license from the on-prem quite easily and smoothly. So there you have so many different benefits doing that. And the most they do it as a part of their BCDR, right? BCDR is your business continuity and disaster recovery plan, right? So BCP plus DR, which is the BCDR. So they do that for the BCDR. They create a different environment. Sometimes, they have the innovation account, a dev account, QA, prod, and then mission critical applications. Because when you do the multi-cloud setup, it's going to be a very expensive. So you only do it for your prod or mission critical applications, right? Because that's how the environment follows in an organization. So just give you guys a little overview of how the account setup would be in a typical scenario. So you're gonna have at the very beginning, you're gonna have an innovation account, or an innovation environment, I should say, and then sandbox. So sandbox is like like a kid's playground. The kid plays that in a sandbox. So he's not messing up the whole house. He's just or messing up the whole area. He has been given that sandbox. He's playing and he is doing whatever he pleases, and that's what the idea here is as well. You take your sandbox, you do what you want to do, and you are not actually breaking the other environment, which are more critical to the company or to the business. So you have that, and then the next in line would be most probably dev, and then you're gonna have QA. Then you can also have UAT, prod, pre-prod. I'm just gonna fast forward to prod now, and Then sometimes you can also have a business critical. Business or mission critical applications, probably you're going to put that into that kind of environment. The reason why I'm actually putting all this, so you should also know that that's what happened in the company. You don't just create your free tier account and then you just get it started. I mean, you have different you have to come up with this, like how are you going to organize all the innovation stuff, the people who can get access to innovation, who can get access to dev, what you can create in the dev account, what you can do in the QA account, because not everyone should be able to go and do whatever they pleases. Otherwise, it's going to be too much a problem. Not everyone should be able to access your broad environment, because that's very crucial. Your customers' applications are actually live there. The mission critical application is the same story. So your prod and your mission critical is probably where you're gonna try to see how you can design a BCDR plan across the multi-cloud. And the whole point here is that's one of the reason why you see there is a growth in the Azure and GCP and other ones, and AWS is a little bit stagnant or declining, because you probably have seen back 5 years ago similar data. AWS was probably 40+%, and Azure they were from somewhere around 18 or 15, and Google was 5 or 7, but they are increasing, and AWS is kind of a stay is stagnant, but the one of the reason is this, BCDR, and the other reason they have their own customers as well. They already have their customer. Microsoft already have their customer, and they're pushing it for their cloud. And pretty much, all the cloud have all the services which they can offer, because they're competing with one another. And from the job perspective, all of these cloud gonna give you the equal pay, right? So don't worry about which cloud you want to do it. AWS has a lot of market share, so probably you get more opportunities. Similar with the Azure, and GCP is also coming up. So you have a equal opportunities, and you have a equal pay grade as well for all these cloud. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is, I mean, where do you get this data? Where do you keep yourself up to date? Because if I just present something like this and I give it to my leadership team, like my senior management, they're not gonna take this, right? Because it needs to be authenticated. The information should come from the authentic source, and this is where we have something called a business media Gartner, and Gartner publishes something magic quadrant for all the different department. They're more specialized in their IT firm, who would do the IT business analysis and track what's happening in the market and what's hot and what's not. And then they're going to publish the reports, white papers, in the form of white papers. So here we have, okay, it's too big, so let me just make it a little small. Okay, not sure how big this is. What am I doing? Is it getting pushed down, or this is getting smaller? Okay, I think it's getting smaller. Okay, I want to make it a little more, because what I want to, because I want you guys to compare, and I have something for comparison. So let me just quickly bring them together. All right. So we keep one here. This is the report which was published by the Gartner in the year 2020-21, July. And now we have another one. I've actually pulled another report. Hopefully it's not too big, but it is. This is gonna give me a hard time. I don't know why this is so big. Just put it up here, bring it down, bring it up, bring it down. Oh my God. Not sure why it's actually coming out that big. This image is very small. I mean, yeah, I actually downloaded this from the AWS website, right? So all these companies gonna brag about their ranking, right? And that's how it is. I mean, you're gonna do the marketing, and that's how you get recognition. That's how you get a customers. So this is your report for 2021, and this is your report for 2022. What you can see is AWS still where it was. At the same time, Microsoft is have moved a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. But Google has drastically moved, right? So all these cloud, they are leaders, Gartner consider them as a leader. So these are the quadrant at four different parts. And you have Ali Cloud, Oracle, and all other ones. So our focus is only going to be on the leaders, and we'll be talking about, the leaders. And so this is your place. This is from where you get the authentic information. Now, next, we're going to start talking about the core services which we need to know on the cloud. And for that, we can take a couple of minutes break. So if anybody wants to maybe take a break and come back, this is your time. Go ahead and come back.